The building stood tall and bright against the sky, its glass walls shining as if it was made of light. Inside, workers moved fast, their clothes smooth, their voices sharp. In the middle of this place, an alien girl walked in slowly. Her feet felt heavy, her hands shook a little. She had prepared for this day, but now every step made her heart race faster. Her outfit was simple, patched together with care, but not at all like the shining, fashionable suits around her. She could feel eyes staring at her, judging her, cutting her down before she had even said a word. She swallowed hard and held her bag close, wishing she could disappear. She walked to the front desk where an alien receptionist sat. The receptionist looked her up and down with a smirk, eyes narrowing in cruel amusement. "That's what you came in wearing?" she said loud enough for others nearby to hear. A couple of workers stopped and turned, hiding their laughs behind their hands. The girl felt her face burn. She wanted to run, but she needed this chance. She whispered softly, almost too low to hear, I am here for the interview." The receptionist leaned back, tapping long nails against the counter. "Interview? In that?" Her laughter echoed, drawing even more attention. The girl lowered her head, her chest tightening as if someone had tied ropes around her lungs. Her mind flashed back to her small home on the colony where she came from. Clothes there were simple, stitched by hand, made to last through cold nights and long days. She had nothing else to wear. She had walked past stores full of rich fabrics and glowing designs, but she couldn't afford even a single thread. She thought maybe her hard work and skill would matter more than looks. But now, standing in the shining building, she felt like a joke to everyone around her. She turned slightly, ready to leave before the humiliation became too much. Maybe she didn't belong here. Maybe all those whispers about aliens like her never fitting in with humans were true. At that exact moment, the heavy sound of shoes clicked against the floor. People moved aside as a man stepped out from his office. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his suit black and neat. His eyes were sharp, scanning the room with the weight of someone who made decisions that changed lives. The laughter died quickly when he appeared. Silence spread as if the air itself froze. His gaze fell on the girl, still standing there with her bag clutched tight, her face red with shame. For a long moment, he said nothing. Everyone expected him to order her out, to ask why she dared to enter his company dressed like that. But then, his voice cut through the silence, deep and strong. "Hire her. Right now." The words struck the room like a thunderclap. The receptionist's smile vanished. Workers froze mid-step, their jaws dropping. The girl blinked, unsure if she heard correctly. She looked up, confused, her lips parting but no sound coming out. Did he mean her? Did the powerful human boss actually mean her? The man didn't repeat himself. He simply locked his eyes on the receptionist, who now shifted uncomfortably in her chair, all the confidence draining from her face. "Sir, she," the receptionist began, but the boss raised a single hand, and she stopped at once. His eyes narrowed. "I said, hire her. Don't waste another second." The girl's heart hammered against her ribs. She felt as if the world tilted beneath her feet. One moment she was a laughing stock, the next she was being pulled into a world she never thought she could enter. She wanted to ask why, wanted to understand what he saw in her, but the boss had already turned away, walking back to his office with calm, heavy steps. He didn't explain himself. He didn't need to. The entire office remained silent for a few more seconds, then whispers started again, softer this time, filled with confusion instead of laughter. People shook their heads, exchanging nervous glances. Why would the boss choose someone like her? The receptionist forced a stiff smile, though her pride was broken. "Fine," she said sharply, sliding a form across the desk. Her eyes burned with anger as she added in a low voice only the girl could hear. "Don't think this means you belong here. You'll fail, and when you do, I'll be watching." The girl said nothing. Her hands trembled as she picked up the form, but inside, something had shifted. Shame was still there, but now it was mixed with something else, a strange, trembling hope. For the first time in her life, someone powerful had spoken in her favor. He hadn't just defended her. He had commanded others to accept her. It felt unreal. As she filled the form, her mind raced. What if this was a trick? What if the boss was testing her? Or maybe he saw something no one else could see? She thought of the long nights she spent studying, the endless work on broken machines in her colony, the way she had survived when others gave up. She had carried those scars, but she never thought they mattered here. Maybe, just maybe, he had noticed something in her that no one else could. She signed her name slowly, her breath shaky, but steady enough to keep going. When she handed the form back, the receptionist snatched it with a glare, stamping it with more force than needed. The girl turned, walking toward the hallway where new workers were guided. People still stared at her, but the laughter was gone. In its place was something sharper, like curiosity mixed with disbelief. She could feel their eyes on her back, but she didn't stop. Each step felt like stepping into fire, but she kept walking. She had no idea why the boss had chosen her, but one thing was certain. This was no ordinary beginning. Something was waiting for her in this place, something bigger than she had ever imagined. She sat at her new desk, her hands resting nervously on the smooth surface. The desk looked bigger than anything she had ever owned, shining under the office lights. Around her, workers tapped on glowing screens and spoke quickly into headsets, their voices sharp and confident. She felt out of place, like a child who had wandered into a world meant for giants. Her clothes still looked different from the others, and she could feel the stares on her back even when no one said anything. She tried to focus on the papers given to her, but every whisper in the room felt like a knife. The receptionist from the front desk walked by, her heels clicking against the floor. She stopped near the girl's chair, bending slightly, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Comfortable, are we? Let's see how long that lasts." She smirked and walked away, tossing her hair as if she had already won a battle. The girl bit her lip, keeping her eyes down, refusing to respond. If she answered, they would only laugh more. Better to stay silent, at least for now. As the day went on, she was given small tasks, filing, sorting, copying data. Simple things, but her hands trembled as she worked. Every mistake would be noticed, every slow movement judged. She worked hard, double-checking everything, trying to prove herself, even if no one cared. The whispers never stopped. "Why her?" one man muttered. "She doesn't even look like she belongs here," another said. Laughter followed, soft but cruel. She heard it all, but kept her head down. Hours passed. The office emptied slowly, workers leaving one by one, their voices fading down the hall. By night, only a few lights were still on. She remained at her desk, her eyes heavy but her hands still moving. She wanted to finish the stack of files before her. She wanted to show that she wasn't lazy, that she was serious. She didn't know that someone was watching. Up in his office, the human boss leaned back in his chair, the city lights shining behind him through tall glass windows. He had finished his own work, but his sharp eyes looked down at the floor below. He saw her still sitting there, her small figure hunched over the desk, fighting sleep but refusing to quit. Most new workers left early, excited to escape the pressure of the first day. But not her. She stayed, as if proving something to herself. His lips curved into the smallest smile. He said nothing, but he noticed. The girl rubbed her tired eyes, staring at the glowing screen. Numbers blurred, but she refused to stop. Her thoughts drifted to her home, the colony she had left behind. There, no one cared how long she worked. Effort was expected. Survival demanded it. But here she was desperate to prove she had worth, even if no one wanted her around. She whispered to herself, just one more page. Just one more. Her voice trembled, but her hands moved again. In the hallway, footsteps echoed. The receptionist had returned to collect something she had forgotten. She spotted the girl still working. A cruel smile touched her lips. "Pathetic," she muttered under her breath. She walked closer, leaning against the desk. "Do you really think staying late will make anyone respect you? He's not watching. No one cares. You're just wasting your time." The girl's chest tightened, but she didn't look up. Her hands kept moving, her eyes fixed on the page in front of her. Silence hung for a moment before the receptionist scoffed and walked away. The boss heard her words through the thin glass wall of his office. His eyes hardened. He didn't call out, didn't defend the girl this time. Instead, he studied the receptionist as she left, her arrogance heavy in every step. Then his gaze returned to the girl, who was still working, refusing to give in to humiliation. That determination reminded him of old stories. Humans in the past who had faced impossible odds, soldiers who had kept moving forward when defeat seemed certain. He saw the same spark in her, though she had no idea. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. The building was almost empty now. She leaned back in her chair, her body aching, but a small smile touched her lips. She had finished the stack. Her work wasn't perfect, but it was done with care. She gathered the papers neatly, placing them in the box where they belonged. For a moment, she sat still, her eyes closing as if she might fall asleep right there. Then she stood slowly, her steps dragging as she walked toward the exit. From his office, the boss finally rose. He moved to the window, watching her small figure disappear through the glass doors at the end of the hall. He whispered to himself, "Good." It wasn't just her work that impressed him. It was her will. He had chosen her for a reason, though no one else could see it yet. Not even her. Outside, the cold night air brushed her face. She pulled her thin coat tighter around her body, shivering as she walked home. The streets were quiet, the stars barely visible through the tall towers. She wondered why the boss had chosen her. She wondered if she would survive even a week in that place where everyone hated her. But deep inside, something told her not to give up. She thought of his words from earlier, echoing in her mind. Hire her, right now. Those words gave her the smallest spark of courage. The next morning would bring new challenges, new whispers, new traps. She knew it. But as she stepped into the darkness, she also knew she couldn't let them break her. If the human boss believed she had a chance, then maybe she did. She would prove herself, no matter how much it hurt. The morning began like any other, the office buzzing with voices, screens glowing, and workers rushing from desk to desk. But the air grew heavy when the doors slammed open. A tall alien client stormed in, his face twisted with anger, his long cloak dragging behind him like a shadow. His voice thundered through the room, demanding to see the boss. Everyone froze. Workers whispered nervously, glancing at one another with wide eyes. The client's company was powerful, and if he pulled his contract, it could ruin everything. Fear spread through the office like fire. The receptionist quickly stepped forward, eager to show off. She bowed politely, her fake smile wide. "Please, sir, let me assist." But before she could finish, the client cut her off with a sharp wave of his hand. "Do not waste my time. Your company failed me. My shipment was delayed, and my people suffer. You promised efficiency, yet I see nothing but excuses." His voice rattled the walls. The receptionist stumbled over her words, trying to calm him, but every sentence she spoke only made him angrier. His face darkened, his hands clenched into fists, and the workers shrank back, afraid he might lash out. The boss stepped out of his office then, his calm presence silencing the whispers. His sharp eyes studied the scene, but instead of speaking himself, he turned to the girl. "You," he said firmly. His voice carried across the room, surprising everyone. She looked up from her desk, her heart skipping a beat. "Me?" she whispered, her hands trembling. The boss nodded once. "Handle this." A shock ran through the office. Laughter bubbled from some corners, cruel and mocking. "Her? She'll ruin everything," one worker muttered. The receptionist smirked, folding her arms with satisfaction. Finally, the girl would embarrass herself, and everyone would see how useless she was. The girl stood slowly, her knees weak. She wanted to refuse, wanted to say she wasn't ready, but the boss's eyes held hers, steady and unshakable. Something in his gaze told her she couldn't back down. She stepped forward, her breath shallow, her hands cold as ice. The alien client towered over her, glaring with burning eyes. "And who are you?" he growled, his voice like thunder. She swallowed hard, her lips dry. "I am new here," she admitted softly. "But I understand what delay means. I know what it feels like when your people wait for supplies they need to survive." The client narrowed his eyes, ready to snap, but her words made him pause. No one had spoken to him that way before. Not with excuses, not with polished lies, but with raw truth. She continued, her voice shaking at first, but growing steadier with each word. "You are right to be angry. If I were in your place, I would be angry too. But I promise you this. We will not fail you again. I will make sure of it myself. Every step, every detail, I will watch it. No more excuses." Her eyes, though filled with fear, burned with sincerity. The office had fallen silent, every worker staring, waiting for the explosion they thought would come. The alien client studied her for a long, tense moment. His heavy breaths filled the room, his sharp teeth flashing as he clenched his jaw. Then, slowly, the fire in his eyes cooled. His shoulders relaxed. "You speak with honesty," he said at last, his voice calmer. "Not like the others who only cover failure with pretty words. Very well. I will give you one chance. Do not waste it." He turned sharply, his cloak sweeping the floor as he walked out. The silence that followed was louder than his voice had been. Workers blinked in shock, their mouths open, but no words coming. The receptionist's face turned red, her smirk gone, replaced by burning jealousy. She clenched her fists so hard her nails dug into her palms. The girl stood frozen, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She could hardly believe what had just happened. The boss broke the silence. He leaned against the railing of the staircase, his expression unreadable. "Now you all see why I hired her," he said calmly. His voice cut through the office like steel. No one dared to laugh now. The workers looked away, ashamed of their earlier mocking. The girl turned her head slowly, her eyes meeting his for a moment. There was no smile on his face, but there was something stronger: pride. She returned to her desk, her legs weak, her hands trembling. She sat down, staring at the screen in front of her, but her mind was far away. She thought of the colony again, of the times when shipments of food had been late, when her people had waited in hunger and fear. She hadn't meant to speak so boldly, but the memory had taken over, spilling from her heart. Maybe that was why the client had believed her, because she spoke from truth, not from a script. Across the room, whispers started again, but this time they were different. "How did she do that?" one worker asked. "He actually listened to her," another said. Curiosity replaced mockery, though envy lingered in some voices. The receptionist seethed, her nails scratching the desk as she glared at the girl. She could not understand why the boss trusted her. The girl kept her head low, pretending to work, but inside she felt something new. It wasn't pride, not yet. It was relief, mixed with the smallest spark of confidence. For the first time, she thought maybe she could survive here. Maybe she wasn't as weak as everyone believed. But she also knew this victory would not end the whispers. If anything, it would make the receptionist and others hate her even more. The boss returned to his office, his steps slow, his thoughts deep. He had taken a risk putting her in that situation, but she had not failed. Instead, she had proven what he already suspected, that she carried something different inside her, something others could not see. He sat down, his eyes narrowing as he looked at the city beyond the window. "Good," he murmured under his breath. "Very good." The girl, unaware of his thoughts, kept working quietly. Her heart still raced, but she felt steadier now. She didn't know what tests would come next, but one thing was clear. She had caught the boss's attention, and nothing would ever be the same again. Rumors spread through the office like fire in dry grass. After the meeting with the alien client, people whispered even louder about her. They did not understand how someone so new, so different, could calm a furious customer when experienced workers had failed. Some said she was just lucky. Others claimed she must have cheated somehow. But the most dangerous whispers were the ones that questioned who she really was. Where had she come from? Why did the boss trust her? Some even suggested she might be a spy. The receptionist, still burning with humiliation, could not let it go. She replayed the scene over and over in her mind, her jaw tightening every time she remembered the boss praising the girl. Jealousy twisted into obsession. She had to find something, anything, to bring the girl down. So she began to dig. Late at night, when most workers were gone, she stayed behind, using her access to records and files. She searched the girl's background, scanning through old databases and forgotten archives. Hours passed, her eyes growing sharp with greed. And then, finally, she found something. The girl was not just another applicant looking for a job. She was from a colony destroyed during the Human-Alien War. A place burned to ash, its people scattered, its name barely remembered except as a symbol of loss. Survivors from there were rare, and those who lived often carried heavy scars, both inside and outside. The receptionist leaned back in her chair, a cruel smile spreading across her face. This was it. This was the weapon she needed. If she exposed the girl, everyone would doubt her. The boss would have no choice but to let her go. The next morning, the receptionist cornered the girl near the break room. Workers gathered quickly, sensing drama in the air. "Tell them where you're really from." The receptionist sneered, holding up the record she had printed. The girl froze, her throat tight, her eyes wide. You thought you could hide it? You're from Eris 4, aren't you? That broken colony that was crushed in the war. You're nothing but a refugee, a leftover from the ashes. You don't belong here. The words cut like knives, sharp and cruel. Gasps filled the room as others leaned in to listen. The girl's hands trembled, her face pale. She wanted to deny it, to run, but she couldn't. Her past was real. Slowly, she lowered her eyes and nodded. Yes, she whispered. Her voice cracked, but she forced the words out. I am from Eris 4. My family, they didn't survive. I came here because I wanted a chance to live, to work, to prove I am more than the ruins I came from. The room fell silent. Some workers shifted uncomfortably, guilt flickering in their eyes. But others narrowed their gaze, suspicion growing stronger. The receptionist smirked, her victory sweet. You hear that? She said, raising her voice. She's one of them, a survivor from a traitor colony. How do we know she isn't here to spy? How do we know she won't betray us too? Murmurs rose around the room, workers exchanging nervous looks. Doubt spread fast, and fear clung to every word. The girl's chest tightened as the walls seemed to close in. She felt smaller than ever, as if the whole world wanted to crush her. Then a new voice cut through the noise, strong, steady, and unmistakable. The boss stepped into the room. His sharp eyes swept over the workers, silencing them with a single glance. He turned to the girl, his face unreadable. For a moment, her heart stopped. She thought he would fire her, that he would say she had no right to be here. She braced herself for the final blow, but instead, he spoke words that shocked everyone. That's why I hired her, he said. His voice was calm but carried the weight of iron. The workers stared, confused. The receptionist blinked, her smirk vanishing. The boss stepped closer, standing beside the girl. She has seen what you have not. She has lived through loss and survived when everything was taken from her. She knows struggle. She knows pain. And that makes her stronger than any of you who mock her. That is the kind of strength this company needs. The girl lifted her head slowly, her eyes wide. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. The boss wasn't ashamed of her past. He valued it. Her scars, the very things that had haunted her, were the reason he had chosen her. The room shifted with unease. Some workers lowered their eyes, ashamed of their whispers. Others remained doubtful, unwilling to trust someone with such a history. But none dared to speak against the boss. His word was final. The receptionist's face burned red. Her plan had backfired, her power slipping through her fingers. She wanted to scream, to fight, but she knew it was useless. She clenched her fists, glaring at the girl with silent hatred. This wasn't over. She would find another way. The girl stood quietly, her heart racing. Relief washed over her, but fear still lingered. She hadn't expected him to protect her like that. Not again. She felt a strange warmth in her chest, a spark of courage she had never known before. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was starting to believe she had worth. When the crowd finally dispersed, she stayed behind for a moment, her eyes meeting the boss's. He didn't smile, but his gaze was steady, filled with something she couldn't name. Respect, trust, belief. Do not hide who you are, he said softly, so only she could hear. It is your strength. Then he turned and walked away, leaving her standing in stunned silence. She touched her chest, where her heart pounded fast. For years, her past had been nothing but a burden, a chain around her neck. But now, for the first time, it felt like something else, a fire she could carry forward. She did not know what challenges lay ahead, but she understood one thing clearly. The boss had chosen her for a reason, and she would not let him down. The morning began with tension. Workers gathered in small groups, whispering about the girl. Some still doubted her, others secretly admired her courage. But not everyone had let go of their jealousy. The receptionist, her pride torn apart again and again, decided she could not wait for the girl to fail naturally. She wanted to destroy her completely. Her plan was cruel but simple. Frame the girl for something unforgivable. She waited for the right moment. Late in the evening, when the office was quiet and only a few workers remained, the receptionist sneaked into the restricted files room. Her hands moved fast across the glowing screen, transferring sensitive data onto a hidden drive. She smiled darkly, knowing that when the theft was discovered, all the evidence would point to the girl. She carefully placed the drive inside the girl's desk drawer, leaving no trace of her own presence. Her heart raced with satisfaction. Tomorrow, The boss would finally see the truth she wanted him to see, that the girl was nothing but trouble. The next day began with alarms. Security lights flashed red, sirens wailed through the halls. Workers rushed out of their rooms, confused and frightened. Voices filled the air. "There's been a breach! Someone has stolen data!" The panic grew as guards stormed into the main office. They searched desks, scanned files, and questioned workers. When they reached the girl's desk, the receptionist stood nearby, her lips curling into a false look of shock. "Check there," she said softly, pretending to be helpful. The guards opened the drawer, and there it was, the stolen drive. Gasps erupted from the workers. Fingers pointed instantly. "It's her. I knew she didn't belong here." The receptionist covered her mouth, pretending to be horrified, but inside she was smiling. The girl stood frozen, her eyes wide, her body trembling. "No," she whispered, her voice breaking. "That's not mine. I didn't do this." She turned to the workers, her hands shaking. "You have to believe me." But no one stepped forward to defend her. The guards moved closer, ready to drag her away. Her knees grew weak. The shame, the fear, it all came crashing down at once. Tears blurred her vision. She had survived war, hunger, loss, but this was different. This was betrayal. The receptionist finally stepped forward, her voice dripping with fake sadness. "It's such a shame," she said loudly so all could hear. "I warned you all. She didn't belong here. And now look, she's proven me right." The workers nodded in agreement, some whispering that the boss would never forgive this. And then he appeared. The human boss walked into the room, his steps heavy, his presence sharp as a blade. The guards paused, lowering their hands slightly. Everyone turned toward him, waiting for his judgment. The girl looked at him with desperate eyes, her heart pounding so loud she thought it might burst. For the first time, she feared he would abandon her, that he would believe the lies. His expression was cold, unreadable, as he studied the scene. The receptionist stepped closer, bowing slightly, pretending to be respectful. "Sir," she said quickly, "we found the stolen data in her desk. I think it is clear what she has done. She betrayed us. She betrayed you." She expected him to nod, to give the order to remove the girl. But he did not. Instead, his eyes narrowed, and his voice cut through the room like thunder. "Is that so?" He walked slowly, his gaze fixed not on the girl, but on the receptionist. He stopped near the drawer, then raised his eyes to her face. "Tell me," he said calmly, "how did you know exactly where to look?" The receptionist froze, her lips parting, but no words coming out. The workers shifted uneasily, sensing something was wrong. The boss's voice grew sharper. "How did you know there was even a theft before I was informed?" Gasps spread through the room. The receptionist's face turned pale. She tried to answer, stumbling over her words, but the boss didn't let her finish. With a signal of his hand, the guards activated a scan on her personal device. Within seconds, the truth glowed on the screen, her fingerprints all over the stolen files. The room erupted in shock. Workers shouted, "It was her? She framed the girl!" The receptionist's eyes widened with panic. She tried to run, but the guards grabbed her, twisting her arms behind her back. The girl stood frozen, tears still on her cheeks, but now they were mixed with relief. The boss stepped closer to her, his expression softening for the first time. "You see now," he said to the others. "She was never the thief. She was the victim of lies." The guards dragged the receptionist away, her screams echoing through the hall as she shouted curses, promising revenge. The workers lowered their eyes, ashamed of how quickly they had believed the worst. The girl's chest rose and fell heavily as she struggled to breathe. She looked at the boss, her lips trembling. "You believed me," she whispered. He nodded once, his eyes steady. "I always did." His words struck her like a wave, filling her with warmth and confusion. Why did he trust her so much? Why did he see what no one else did? As the crowd dispersed, the girl sank into her chair, her body still shaking from the ordeal. She replayed every moment in her head, the accusations, the shame, the fear of losing everything. And then the sudden turn, the revelation of truth, the boss's unshakable trust. It felt unreal, like a dream she had no right to dream. But deep inside, she realized something important. This place was not just a job. It was a battlefield of trust and betrayal, of power and survival. And somehow, she had earned the protection of the most powerful person in the building. The boss had exposed the truth, not just to save her, but to show everyone else that she mattered. that she was more than their whispers, more than her scars, more than their doubt. The night came, and the building grew quiet again. She sat by her desk, staring at the glowing lights outside the window. For the first time, she felt stronger. She knew enemies would keep coming, that the receptionist was only the beginning. But she also knew one thing with certainty: she was not alone anymore. As long as the boss stood by her side, she could survive anything. Dark news spread like a shadow across the city. Screens in the office flashed urgent reports, voices on the broadcasts trembling with fear. A hostile alien empire had issued threats against Earth, their fleets gathering in deep space. Whispers filled the building as workers huddled together, their faces pale. The company, which many thought was just business, was suddenly revealed as something more. It was tied to defense, hidden behind contracts and codes, supplying strategies and resources that could change the fate of war. Everyone realized they were standing inside something far larger than a simple office. The girl sat quietly at her desk, watching the panic grow around her. Workers argued in low voices, some saying they should quit, others saying there was no escape. Fear clung to every corner of the room like thick smoke. She felt it too, the same fear she had carried as a child on her destroyed colony. The memories hit her, flames rising, ships burning in the sky, the sound of people screaming for help that never came. Her chest tightened until it was hard to breathe. The boss appeared suddenly at the top of the staircase. His presence cut through the noise like a blade. His voice was calm, but it carried weight. Enough. Panic will not save you. Work will. The workers fell silent, their eyes turning toward him, but many still looked restless. His gaze swept across the room before landing on her. You. Come with me. Her heart jumped. She stood slowly, her legs trembling as she followed him into his private office. The door closed behind them, muting the noise of the outside world. Inside, the room looked different than she had imagined. Maps lit the walls, glowing with shifting battle lines and moving fleets. Holograms of ships floated in the air, their positions changing as if alive. Data scrolled across every screen, too much for her to read all at once. This was no ordinary office. It was a war room. The boss turned, his sharp eyes fixed on her. For a long moment, he said nothing, letting the weight of the room sink into her. Finally, his voice came, low but firm. Now you know why I hired you. She blinked, her lips parting but no sound coming. He stepped closer to the glowing maps. This war is not new. It is returning, and I need people who understand it, not from books, not from numbers, but from experience. His gaze locked onto hers. You survived it. Her throat went dry. She shook her head slightly. I was just a child. I lost everything. That doesn't make me a soldier. He studied her with a steady expression, unshaken by her protest. It makes you something more. You saw how they fight. You saw what fear does. You understand what most here cannot. His words hit her like heavy stones, pressing against her chest. She wanted to deny it, to say she had nothing to offer, but deep down, she knew he was right. The nightmares she carried, the memories she wished she could erase, those were truths no training could give. She walked closer to the map, her eyes scanning the glowing lines. Slowly, details began to pull at her memory. The formations, the way fleets were arranged, the tactics that had destroyed her home. She remembered hiding in the ruins, watching enemy patrols sweep through the streets. She remembered how they moved, how they thought. Her voice trembled as she pointed to one of the glowing lines. If they attack from here, they will use decoys first. They want to spread fear before they strike the heart. The boss nodded, his expression unreadable. Go on. Her fingers moved, tracing across the map. They don't waste time on small targets. They cut supply lines first. People starve, lose hope, and then the real army comes. Her voice grew steadier as she spoke, though her heart ached with each memory. She forced herself to continue, showing patterns she had never told anyone about. The boss listened closely, saying nothing, but his eyes burned with approval. When she stopped, she realized her hands were shaking. She stepped back quickly, ashamed of how much she had revealed. I shouldn't be here, she whispered. I'm not trained. I'm not strong like you. The boss walked toward her, his steps slow and deliberate. He stopped only a few feet away, his gaze heavy. Strength is not always muscle or weapons. Sometimes it is memory. Sometimes it is survival. You carry both. She lowered her eyes, unsure if she should feel proud or broken. For years, her past had been a curse, something that haunted her. But here, in this war room, it suddenly mattered. It was the very thing that made her valuable. The boss turned back to the glowing maps. "You will help me," he said simply, "not because you want to, but because you are the only one who can." Silence filled the room, heavy but powerful. She wanted to run, but her feet stayed rooted to the floor. She wanted to scream that it wasn't fair, but she could not deny the truth. She took a slow breath, forcing her voice out. "And if I fail?" The boss did not look at her. His eyes stayed on the map, but his words were cold and sharp. "Then we all fail." Her body shook at the weight of his answer. For the first time, she understood the true scale of what she had been pulled into. This was not about a job anymore. It was about survival. Hers, his, and the entire planet's. She clenched her fists, fighting the fear that clawed at her chest. If he trusted her, if he believed in her, maybe she could find the strength to believe in herself. When she finally left the office, the workers looked at her with new eyes. They didn't know what had happened inside, but they saw something different in her face. Her steps were slower, heavier, but her eyes held a fire they had not seen before. She walked back to her desk, her heart still racing, her mind full of maps and battle lines. She didn't know what the future would bring, but she knew one thing clearly now. The war was coming, and she was no longer just a survivor. She was part of the fight. The threat became real when the alien fleet finally appeared on the outer edge of Earth's defense zone. The city shook with alarms, and news spread like fire through every screen and channel. People filled the streets in panic, some crying, some running, some praying. In the office, silence gripped the workers as reports poured in. Ships were moving closer, and the government called for emergency action. Fear was everywhere, sharp and choking. The girl stood by her desk, her hands trembling, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. She had spoken about this moment, warned about the tactics the enemy would use, but now it was no longer talk. The danger was here. She felt her legs weaken under the weight of memory, her colony burning, her people screaming. But she forced herself to stay standing. She couldn't break down now. Not when everyone was watching. The boss appeared, his face calm, his voice steady even as the ground seemed to shake beneath them. "Conference room. Now." His command pulled everyone to follow. They gathered around a massive table lit with glowing maps of Earth and the alien fleets advancing. Leaders from other divisions connected through holograms, their voices tight with fear. Arguments broke out instantly, some shouting to surrender, others insisting on a desperate fight. The chaos filled the room like a storm. Then the girl's voice rose, soft at first, then stronger. "Listen to me." The room stilled. She pointed at the glowing map, her hand trembling, but her eyes steady. "They will not strike the capital first. They will cut the supply lines, just like before. If we move our defenses here and here," she said, sliding her hand across two key points, "we can block their first move. If we fail, they will starve us before they kill us." Some leaders scoffed. Why should we trust her? She's not trained. But others hesitated, remembering how she had saved the contract with the alien client, remembering how her predictions had been right before. The boss leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "Because she knows them better than anyone here. She survived what you have only read about." His words silenced the doubters. The girl's chest rose and fell quickly as she continued. "They will use decoys. They want to spread fear. Do not waste ships chasing shadows. Stay focused on the real strike." Her voice shook, but she kept speaking, each word pulled from painful memory. The leaders argued less now, their eyes fixed on her. She wasn't reading from a plan. She was speaking from scars, from nightmares, from survival. The boss placed a hand on her shoulder. His voice carried through the room. "Today, you lead." The weight of those words nearly crushed her. Her knees threatened to give out, but she forced herself to stay upright. "Me?" she whispered. He nodded once. "You. They will follow your orders." The leaders looked at one another, surprised but unwilling to argue against him. Slowly, they nodded. The girl felt the world tilt, but there was no escape. She had been chosen. When the first attack came, it was exactly as she predicted. Alien ships moved in strange, confusing patterns, sending smaller fleets to distract and frighten. Many in the defense wanted to chase them, but her voice came firm through the command channel. "Hold your positions. Don't move. Those are decoys." Seconds later, the real strike appeared. Massive ships heading straight for the supply lines. Because of her warning, the defenses were ready. Earth's fleets clashed with the attackers in a storm of light and fire. Explosions lit the sky, the battle shaking the ground even miles away. Inside the command room, she stood frozen, her hands gripping the table so hard her knuckles turned white. Every explosion on the map felt like fire in her chest, but she kept calling out commands. Move the second line here, shift reinforcements there, don't let them surround you. Her voice grew steadier with each order, her fear slowly turning into control. Workers around her looked at her with awe, no longer mocking, no longer doubting. Hours passed, the battle raging without rest. Finally, the alien fleet began to retreat. Earth's defenses had held. Supply lines remained intact, and the main cities were safe. A roar of relief spread through the command room, people cheering, hugging, crying. But the girl stood quietly, her chest still rising and falling fast. She could hardly believe it. Her plan had worked. They had survived, for now. The boss turned to her, his eyes steady. For the first time, a faint smile touched his lips. You saved thousands today. His words hit her harder than the chaos of the battle. She blinked, her eyes filling with tears. She had been mocked, doubted, nearly destroyed by lies. But now the same people who once whispered against her looked at her with respect. Some even bowed their heads slightly as they passed her, acknowledging her strength. The receptionist was gone, dragged away in shame long before this day. But the girl knew enemies would rise again, both outside and inside. Still, she no longer felt like the fragile outsider who had walked into the office in patched clothes. She had faced humiliation, betrayal, and fear, but now she stood taller, stronger. Her past was no longer just pain. It was the weapon that had turned the tide of war. When night fell, she stepped outside, the air cool against her skin. The city lights glowed, but above them, the stars shone brighter than she had ever seen. For the first time since her colony was destroyed, she felt something new inside her chest, hope. She remembered the boss's hand on her shoulder, his voice steady and sure. He had believed in her when no one else did, and because of that, she had found the strength to believe in herself. The war was not over. The enemy would return. But now she knew she was ready. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a leader. And the galaxy would remember the day the alien girl, once mocked and broken, stood beside a human boss and changed the fate of Earth.